Um, my name comes from a poem by Rabindranath Tagore, so there is a special link that I do have to Kolkata. And my parents had hoped that I would be obviously a lot more artistic than I turned out to be. But nevertheless, I do know the poem, and as I was sitting here and listening to people speaking and questions, I felt that there was a relevance in perhaps taking 30 seconds to recite the poem, because if you listen to the words, it's amazing how much of just good common sense can be applied to all ages. So the poem goes, and I'm sure all of you know this, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depths of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way in the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action. Into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. Think of those words, and think of what relevance they have to the words that we are speaking in today's day and age, with all the stuff that is happening around the internet, digital, the truth, authenticity. These are all words, and we just have to look back a little bit to see how we need to move forward. So let not what's happening trouble you or worry you in any way, shape, or form. It has actually all been done before. Open your eyes and look around. So it's all actually very, very good and all in line with the larger world plan. I'm just trying to figure out how I move this cursor. Hang on a second. Just a quick one on who we are, because we do have a very controversial name like Naked Communications. This was not a name I came up with. It was three blokes out of London, John Wilkins, John Harlow, and Will Collins, who started this 12 years ago. In an attempt to try and do exactly what is happening right now, is changing the way we look at communications and basically questioning the status quo and finding and focusing on solving business problems from a position of objectivity, as opposed to coming in and saying, I'm a digital agency, so I'm going to give you digital knowledge, and I'm an advertising agency, so I'm going to make sure I make a television commercial. Taking a step back and really coming at communication from an objective point of view and seeing what is best on the brand. We have been recognized globally, so this is just to tell you that we're legit. We have our beliefs, and they're strong beliefs which have been around for 12 years. Everything communicates, people are our partners, see the full picture, and there is always a better way. There is obviously much longer explanations than these, which I will not give you right now, but they are all principles that have hung in there for the last 12 years, and they're still relevant. We have a number of global clients, some of whom I look after here, as well as some local clients. We work with pretty much every agency in the world because of the way we function. We function as collaborators rather than the purveyors of the truth. And we do exist in 16 locations around the world, though we are a very, very small company, because our job is to really bring in thinking power rather than numbers. So we're still relatively small in terms of numbers. And that brings me to the actual meat of what I wanted to share with you. I think that if we have to talk about the challenges of the digital age, I would like to take a step back and actually question that brief, which I always do regardless of where I'm at. And so I thought instead, given that over 60% of our population is under the age of 30 and is highly digitally competent, I would look at the youth culture as a place to begin when you talk about challenges. And I would look at the brand challenges that this group of people pose to marketeers. Yes, digital is an integral part of it, but the larger challenge needs to be looked at without looking at digital as almost a side. Digital is now a part of their life, and so you need to see it as that. So if I was to look at the larger world of the youth, there are fickle fads. So what's the latest shiny new thing? It's intensely felt, but it's very short-lived. and it's not necessarily something everybody buys into. And then there are societal shifts. This is bigger picture, more enduring, longer lasting, culture, etc. It's important to keep a finger on the pulse of the fickle fads, obviously. You can't be clueless walking around wondering, oh, what's that Cola Very D thing going on? But you also need to make sure that it's the societal shifts that give brands a greater outlook and a much longer looking outlook. Because otherwise, you'll just be running around like a little rat in a cage, around the little wheel. You have to be able to look at larger societal shifts and be able to figure out how am I going to deal with this, which is what I'm going to share with you in a very short and quick little segment. You are very welcome to take copies of this, take it back, look at it, send me emails, question it, and I'll be very happy to have a conversation. The first of these is called Reinventing. Everything old is new again. The youth constantly crave novelty. This is not an epiphany. They always want something that is made for them, customized. Also not an insight. But what I believe is an insight is the fact that it doesn't have to be brand new. That you can take something that is old and turn it into gold for your current consumers. We saw an earlier presentation where Maggi is still up there. Maggi is a brand I worked on in 1994. And it was already 10 years old at that time. It is still as relevant today to a group of people and stays very current. It's that feeling that there is something wonderful about it which has been reinvented. The second of these is called Relocate. The youth are not sitting at home. They are not waiting for somebody to deliver information to them on a television set or in a newspaper necessarily. They are spending time outside. They are consuming media outside. Some of the ways that young people are watching IPL is in a bar or a pub. They're not sitting next to their mom and dad watching a cricket game. So you need to find these people in these places. They are mobile. And that's where we start being able to actually connect with them and find a way to speak to them. The third option is reality. It is one of those things which is now an inevitable part of our lives, is the fact that our youth believe that every single one of them can be famous someday. There is an explosion of reality shows, and there's an opportunity for stardom at every corner. And this is not just television related. So there are youth running their own businesses, or young people posting their movies on YouTube. These are trends that are happening today and should not be ignored from the larger perspective as brands go forward. The fourth of these is Reflect. We are the same, but we are different. They are realizing that they are part of a larger psyche, but they are somehow different. So there is a commonality yet a difference, and they're embracing that. So there was an Axe study done. Axe, the infamous deodorant brand for men. They actually did a study to figure out whether there was a difference between the small town boys and the guys in the city. And they found that there wasn't actually that much of a difference in their needs and wants. The youth are being exposed to the same kind of media because they are digital. No longer is media restricted to a location. So everybody is consuming everything, whether it's ads on YouTube or whether it's a viral video on YouTube, or whatever ads that you're seeing on Facebook are being shared regardless of where you live. And this explosion of opportunities this explosion is creating opportunities in cities. So it's no longer important to make it to a big city to make it big. The fifth of the 6 principles is respect. The youth are no longer ashamed of being Indian and of their culture and of embracing it. You have a famous designer living in Kolkata called Sabyasachi, who just showed his latest couture work at the Museum of Modern Art in London. And he does probably some of the most authentic Indian culture work. And it is being embraced. People are proud of it, and they are comfortable in their skin, which is, I'm Indian, but I'm Western, and there's nothing wrong with having both. And the last one is called Reaching Out, where the youth feel they can now make a difference. We have had everything from the Pink Chaddi campaign to the Meter Jam campaign. The young people do not believe that their future is in the hands of other people. They believe it's in their own hands. Satyamev Jayate is slowly kind of transforming that as well, which has been a good new trend that I have been watching quite closely. And they're using social media to speak their minds. So digital is no longer just a passive delivery of information or just making friends. They're now using this to empower themselves. I have a quick single slider on Coke Studio, which was one of the initiatives that I was part of creating for India, not globally. Globally, it began in 2007 in Brazil, moved into Pakistan in 2008, and came into India last year. It's a global property with the intellectual property being owned by Coca-Cola globally. In Pakistan, the show airs on over 23 channels, which is a huge sort of a expansion of the property itself. These have been created, this particular property has been created to have brand love with the youth without forcing the product down their throat. And over time, it does work out towards a larger brand presence. But the initial concept is not about go out and buy a Coke. The initial thing is about if our brand is about opening happiness, then music is one of the ways that you open happiness. Let's use that. So using those basic principles is what brought this show about. But the way it has then been adopted by the different countries it has lived in has created quite a phenomena. And this is about just handing the brand over, but managing it on behalf of the consumer, giving it a place to live and grow, and having the consumer actually build it for you. And together creating something that is well loved across many countries and is going into a few more countries even as we speak this year. So what are the questions that marketers must ask themselves if we are to meet today's communication needs? There are 6 questions. How can my brand reinvent to stay ahead of the curve? How can my brand communicate so that it can be easily accessed out of home? How can my brand create possibly some fame for my consumer? Is my brand message urbane enough, or is it actually just communicating with the lowest common denominator? Don't think that your consumers are dumb. They are a lot smarter than you and I all put together in this room. So treat them with a sense of respect and give them what they deserve. How can my brand leverage the pride of being Desi? And can my brand, now this is not something you must do, but question it and say, can my brand be the catalyst in creating a real change amongst the youth? So if we can start answering these questions to some extent, we can start understanding what are the challenges facing us and find the right answers, at least for the moment, because my last slide says, ask these questions once in a while and watch your answers change. We live in a dynamic world, and this is one of those dynamic situations. Thank you very much, and I'm going to give this to Narendra.